Yo, welcome into the Illini Audible Podcast. My name is Saeed Bravo. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the pod. I'm joined as always by my colleague and friend, Zeno. That's right, Zeno. I realized I hadn't said that on the pod. It was always colleague, and so I feel
Yeah, I
like
mean
it's
we're cool.
important to
We're
know.
cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
enjoy
for
I
sure.
enjoy your presence. We're friends.
Now it's gonna feel like we forced it. So well, we'll see how we survive. Um, but yeah, welcome into the pod. We're doing this ahead of week one. It's currently week zero. It's on that tipping point, right? It's Sunday night. And obviously the college football season is now in swing. I don't want to say full swing because not everybody has played, but it's coming up. It's Illinois has a week one against Western Illinois. It should be interesting to see just how they uh, put the reps that people get and all that, and the way that the game goes. Not sure if it's going to be an indicator of a lot of things because of the nature of the opponent, but obviously, still, it's a game, and we want to watch. And it's Champagne has not had football in a while, so yeah. Let's get into we each have five guys narratives that we're gonna get into that we're intrigued by, and so we'll get into that tonight. Zeno, what do you got going on right now?
Just we're remodeling the basement. It's a bit of a different setting behind me, but that's what I have going on. What about you?
No, I've moved into my removed. I've moved back into my apartment for the semester, the year, obviously senior year. I'm sure everybody watching this has seen my Twitter at least and all that. Yes, I'm interning with the Inquirer, Illini Inquirer, and still working with Champagne Room as well. But no, look, I do have, for those watching on YouTube, I do have a brand new background. So I'm very proud of this. I'm just the way that it turned out. Just to give you guys a peek behind the curtain, my desk is not. This is not where the desk is supposed to be. Like my desk is actually like facing my door instead of facing the wall, so that this beautiful background could happen. So um
Let me do a little
big
money
White Sox
spread.
fan over there. What? There you go. Look at Zeno
I just
pulling
don't have
out.
a display.
He doesn't have a display, but very proudly has all the credentials. And for me, I got my all of that stuff, the lanyards and all that's cool. But I do also have, if you take a look a little bit higher up, I used to do cross country in high school, so I have a couple of those bibs, even though I accomplished nothing in that. So hopefully this career can accomplish at least something. Anyways,
At
all
least some.
right, let's at least something is what I'm shooting for. So we'll see. All right, let's get right into our guys. This is kind of like a who's your guy type of site. If you ever listened to 670 The Score and any of those like pre-draft shows, this will be kind of similar. So we'll get into that. Zeno, do you want to start? Who's your guy? What are your narratives? What do you got
Yeah,
first?
I'll start off with a big body. With someone on defense, they say defense wins championships, and there's championship hunger on this year's team. I want to go with Alec Bryant, linebacker out of Houston. This will be his senior year. I think he's really poised for a breakout year, similar to what we saw Gabe Akis do. He's got that big build. He's not quite the same player as Gabe Akis, but we're seeing Illinois lose a lot of talent on that second line of the defense. Seth Coleman went to the NFL. But Alec Bryant, it feels like he's set for his breakout year, and I don't see why it couldn't be this year. I don't know what your thoughts on him are, but with Gabe Backus there, with a talented D line that we're going to get into later, I think Alec Bryant could really, really shine.
No, for sure. Alec Bryan comes in at 6'3", 250 pounds. But this guy is huge, right? And so last season didn't really have a whole lot of production. It had similar kind of production as he had in the previous couple years in college football, but obviously a guy that has the physical traits to be a guy who can come in and make an impact. And so, listen, I think that if Western Illinois is supposed to be this game where you can give these guys a couple more reps than maybe they would in a very very big game. Let's say like in week what is it against? Yeah, week 4 against Indiana. Like this will be a prime opportunity for him to get some really good reps. And I mean, I just can't get over how like giant this dude is. Like this is a beast. And so yeah, we'll see if how he does. Last season, only 2 sacks, 15 solo tackles. Um, it'll be interesting to see the way that he is put out there in the field. I it yeah. So we'll see. The defensive line is definitely something that is intriguing, as we talked about before, because of the nature of the amount of question marks that there could be, and there is a lot of optimism around the Wisconsin guys. Among them is Kurt Neal. I think Kurt Neal can be really good at that nose tackle position, but it'll certainly be interesting. So I guess with that, I'll move to my first guy. Um, yeah, let me get into my guy and get into exactly why this is the first guy off my list. So coming in at number 1 for me is one Caleb Patterson, defensive back from Jackson, Mississippi. Obviously a JUCO product, Pearl River Community College. A guy that has, I think, if I had to come up with a word for this guy, I think it'd be great, man. This is a guy who started in community college, obviously a JUCO product, but he came to Illinois, and he had to fight for those reps. And I give him a lot of credit because I obviously having a conversation with him at local media day, you get a sense of the guy, and he is very level-headed, a calm dude. And obviously, a lot of these guys will tell you the same thing, but wants to take it day by day, help the team win. But I give him a lot of credit because as a guy who last season had competition in front of him, Torrey Cox Jr. was among them, and then obviously a name that a lot of Illinois fans must remember, and that hopefully, hopefully he's doing all right nowadays. Terrence Brooks, a dude who had all the hype coming in from Texas and played with Illinois for a season, and then just kind of his story kind of got swept under the rug, or just it didn't end up. No one ever heard anything about him ever since the announcement of him leaving the team. But you give Caleb Patterson a lot of credit because of the way that he handled that situation. By all accounts, it was his job to lose. And he ended up being one of the guys among Jaheim Clark and Torrey Cox, obviously Xavier Scott, but to shine last season. And so I asked him, how much, pride is there in that last season that he had last year? And he did admit that there was a lot of pride, especially coming from a point at Pearl River where there's self-doubt. As a guy who wants to go, like, picture this. You're a guy who plays football in peak SEC country in Mississippi, and you end up going JUCO, and you spend a year there. There's no question the amount of self-doubt that this guy had to go through. And to be a guy who fights for reps, isn't maybe the most physically gifted or the fastest guy, but he fought for his reps. He was able to win a job, and I think that he'll have a even bigger role. Now, what I will say is that he will likely have a target on his back simply because of those smaller details that you have to look at in terms of a guy who maybe doesn't have those immediate physical traits to be a big, like, the physical traits to be successful in the Big Ten. But it's still a guy who has proven a lot, especially last season. See if he can do this upcoming year.
Yeah, no, Caleb Patterson is an interesting story for sure. That's a very talented D-back room. Just looking at the cornerbacks, right? You've got Xavier Scott, Jaheim Clark, Miles Scott, right? There's a lot of talent to go around, and you mentioned it. Terrence Brooks is, how do we put this? Mysterious, maybe fizzling out. It just didn't work out, right? And a lot of that hype that we had for, a Texas transfer coming into this program was maybe mitigated by Caleb Patterson's performances, and maybe something similar could happen this year, right? If God forbid, an injury happens, Illinois has Caleb Patterson to step up. If there's a matchup that's just not working out for any of the Scots or any of the other DBs, Caleb Patterson's the next man up. And the great thing about Caleb is that he is a junior. Unless he has an insane breakout year this year, Illinois has him for his senior campaign, right? Illinois is going to lose Torrey Cox, going to lose Xavier Scott, Miles Scott. Caleb Patterson's 2025 season, in all likelihood, will be building for a 2026 that we could see, Xavier Scott levels, Miles Scott levels, that sort of elevation that we see Illinois DBs take under Brett Bielema, right? And Tyler Strain is another guy in that room that I think is a big depth guy. He's not really the first man on the depth chart, but he's another defensive back who, like Caleb Patterson, is the next man up. And, again, Caleb Patterson Jr. has another year in him. I think he's poised for a breakout year this year, if not next year, right?
Well, yeah, I think you certainly, if you're Caleb Patterson, or if you're a fan of that secondary, you hope for those kinds of results. The thing about Caleb is that there's, like, I don't think he'll ever admit it, but I got the sense that he definitely is very proud of that of what he accomplished last season, and he says he doesn't want to get too ahead of himself. But I go back to, again, not to harp on it too much, but the whole Terrence Brooks thing and the way that he won that, kind of he beat out that for that job. And obviously I also asked him about whether or not the thought of that, what you mentioned, the success that DBs tend to have from Illinois rolling into the league, and how that looks like for him. And he did admit that those thoughts do creep in, right? The idea that you could end up being in the league. But obviously, with the caveat of not getting too ahead of himself and taking it day by day. What I will say is that I'm curious to see how exactly it is that he manages, I guess is the right word, or he handles the system, mastering the system. Like, a lot of talk of the word the system. I think I talked to Torrey Cox about what has been his biggest learning curve and the adjustment that he's had to make in this fall camp as compared to last fall camp. Obviously, football's football for him, but there's the idea of mastering the system and having a full understanding in it, letting yourself have the ability to do all those things. So I'm curious to see what kind of differences there are with him, but I'm sure it'll be a storyline to follow. So so I think that should be fun. But Zeno, who's your guy? Who's your number two? What's cooking in there?
Yeah, I'll go to the other side of the ball since we've spent so much time on defense. Malik Elzy is a name that I think a lot of people had hype for when he was coming in. I spoke to a lot of Illinois recruits during local media day, and they all talked about Malik. They were like, "Oh yeah, Malik Elzy was the guy." I talked to a lot of Chicago area kids who knew Malik, played against Malik, played with Malik on travel teams for other sports. They know what he's capable of, and this junior campaign around here right now is quick tangent. We don't see Jeremiah Smiths and Ryan Williamses every day, right? They're once in a lifetime, once in a recruiting cycle type prospects, freshmen who just come in and play the way they do right out the gates. This junior campaign, this junior sophomore to junior year, this second to third, third to fourth year is when we see these wide receivers really flourish. That's when we see Pat Bryant become the player that we all saw him become last year. That's when we see Zachary Franklin turn into a veteran, realize his role and what he can do. I think Malik Elzy is poised for that kind of breakout year. Again, he didn't have the brightest of years last year because he's playing behind Pat Bryant, behind Zachary Franklin. But if Illinois can utilize him properly, again, he's not a big body receiver like Pat, like Zachary. But Malik Elzy, I think, is one name that we should keep an eye on. I think a lot of teams should keep an eye on.
Yeah, I certainly think there's been a lot of hype around him, his name specifically. I want to add this little nugget about him. This summer he hosted his first summer camp for kids, and I thought that was really cool for him as a Chicago kid to go back up there and to give back to the community. So that's definitely something that, not totally sure that many college football players at this level do that, and I think for him that's a pretty high profile commitment to make. And so I think that's a very sweet part of his story. But I do want to add this. I think that there are two guys that have been two names that have also been buzzing around that give me pause for Malik Elzy, because these two names have been circulating around so much. And we've talked about it before, Hank Beatty and Colin Dixon, right? These are supposed to be the guys. These are the guys that Brett Bielema and the coaching staff have been communicating that these are the guys presumably coming into this season. And so that gives me pause to think about, I have no doubt that Malik Elzy can be that guy, and he certainly has the physical traits to be that guy. But I'm curious your take in terms of, why is it the case that we hear so much about Hank Beatty and Colin Dixon, and Hank Beatty obviously being that kick return returner, but when we could also be hearing that, to me is an indicator that maybe he hasn't had as good of a fall camp than maybe this program expected coming into this fall.
Yeah, I mean it's not an unhealthy thing to speculate, right? But maybe it just is the fact that Hank Beatty put in reps on special teams. I want to talk about special teams a little bit later, but putting those reps in special teams means a lot to coaches. Again, just where I grew up and who I watched, Tavon Austin never missed a special teams rep in college, and he had the most iconic highlight reel of all time, right? People say he's a wide receiver. He played every role on the offensive side. He was a running back. He was inside. He was outside. He was a punt returner, kick returner. He did everything, right? And that sort of work ethic, that I guess willingness to cover any holes, I guess, is maybe where Hank Beatty gets more flowers. I don't know if Malik did special teams in high school. I know he hasn't in college, but maybe it's just that seniority. Maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just a matter of that, right? Just getting more reps in special teams and putting yourself out there. But yeah, I couldn't tell you.
One thing I also want to point out is that I think a lot of the reason for why there's also buzz for Colin Dixon is that familiarity, the amount of reps he had with Luke Altmaier. I'm thinking back to last season, and I think this would require me to go back into the stat looking mode. But the amount of time that he's had with Luke Altmaier could also be a question to me in terms of, last season he only had 4 receptions for 77 yards, 1 touchdown. So it's obviously not something that, this isn't a guy that we saw that much last season. And obviously the caveat being you had 2 ultra productive guys and Pat Bryant. And obviously there's the receiving core, the way that it turned out. But you think about that as well. And so the way that I look at this first game is an opportunity, and it goes back to what I said earlier as well. This is an opportunity for Malik Elzy to show out as well, to give him that confidence and to have him hopefully roll that into week 2 against Duke, and then continue that, and you hope that this is a guy who can be productive, uh, and contribute a lot in for this football team. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think another thing, I don't think that Malik has played much on the inside. I know Collins played a ton on the inside. I know Hanks played on the inside. I just think maybe last year when Pat and Zakari were both on the field, Pat Bryant and Zakari Franklin were both on the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
Malik didn't have the reps, and the moment that Malik does step in, right? If you're an opposing defense, you see Pat Bryant, Tanner Arkin, Colin Dixon, and Malik Elzy as the opposing personnel. You know where it's going, right? Realistically, it's not going to Malik, and I just wonder if that's why we don't see the flashy stats. That's why we don't see as many reps. Um, yeah, that's just my speculation. Yeah.
Dude, it is so intriguing. It's so exciting to. We talked about this last pod, but I still go back to. Maybe we've been thinking about this the wrong way. Like, like Pat Bryant and Sakari Franklin were so good that they got. Maybe they were so good that they took. And obviously, this is gonna sound like such an obvious statement, but maybe they were so good that they took away reps from other guys, and so the guys who are going to step up. It's exciting to think about what they can accomplish this season, because as I mentioned last pod, it's the amount of flavors that you have, the different guys: Hudson Clement, Justin Bowick, Malik Elzy, and you have the young guys behind them as well. But you I don't know. I personally think about I'm excited to think about what this wide receiver core could look, and I think that's a perfect way to go to my guy, my other guy. Um, so for me, I'll roll into wide receiver, and I mentioned his name, Justin Bowick, 210 pounds, from Powder Springs, Georgia. Obviously, transferred from Ball State and EIU, and he comes into this program hoping to make an impact. Right, 6'4", uh, a guy that I'm intrigued by. Like as I mentioned before, in the last pod, he had one of the things that intrigues you the most about this guy is the size. It is like this is a definition of a wide receiver, and he's had now he's grown close to he's gotten close to Hudson Clement, and it seems like they those two have gotten along. But last season, 20 receptions, 383 yards, for 3 touchdowns. So you wonder exactly, what his role would be on this team. Not incredibly eye popping numbers from last season, but it's an intriguing guy that I think uh, can be an impact guy in a year where you're unsure of whether or not there's a go-to guy. And so to me, that's very intriguing. What is your take, Zeno?
Yeah, he's not the most eye-catching of wide receivers. Again, we hear Brett talk about the wide receiver room. He always brings up Colin Dixon and Hank Beatty. He hasn't brought up Justin Bowick or Hudson Clement enough, which, as someone on the outside, might be a little bit scary. Might be a little bit of, hey, I'm not going to talk about this guy, so that when he plays against Western Illinois, when he plays against Duke, he goes off for a big game. It might be that kind of thing. But Justin Bowick, I think, he has 2 years of eligibility remaining, coming in from Ball State. Against Ball State, not a big program, right? But he's performed well for what it is, and he's used Ball State as not to put it superficially, but a stepping stone to get to Illinois, right? And clearly, since EIU, since Ball State, this staff has seen something in him. He's a big body receiver, not the fastest of receivers, but he's a guy that I think could kill in checkdowns, could play out wide, could play inside. Really just a get out of jail free card for Luke Altmaier, which in a year where he's got so much change in his receiving core, losing Zakari and Pat could be something that, really is wow, this is the transfer of the season, or this could be, just another receiver, right?
Yeah, this is definitely one of those Guagi guys, right? Go up and get it type of guy that if yeah, you mentioned it. Like he can go up and get it, and so if he is on that field and he is making the strides that he hopes to make, because there's no question. I mean, I had a conversation with him during local media day. Like, why here? Why Illinois? And the reasoning is pretty simple. It's the coaching staff and the level of play that he's going to be competing against. And so you mentioned the idea that he used EIU Ball State as stepping stones to kind of get into that level. Who's to say Illinois isn't also a stepping stone to get to the next level? And that's perfectly okay, right? Not every guy has to come in here and say, I'm going to change the world. I'm in here. I'm going to change this team. Sure, there are guys who are wired that way, but not every guy has to be that way. And so, as a guy who comes in hopes that he certainly has the body, the size to get to that next level, it's to see hopefully if he can make some highlight plays, make some big plays for this team, or make some role level plays for this team that can hopefully propel him. You mentioned that he has not only just one season of eligibility, he has 2 seasons of eligibility. So why not go up and use this guy? And if you have to use this guy as or have to take this year as a developmental year, then you do that. And so it'll be interesting to see exactly how he performs. Now, again, Western Illinois, obviously, like it's an opportunity. Like, he's familiar with these kinds of programs, so like it'll be interesting to see how he performs then as well. If it is that he gets as many reps as maybe we think he could get, but point blank, Guwagi guy, and so hopefully a guy who can make some sort of impact this season. But with that, we turn to you, Zeno. Who you got next?
Yeah, my next guy is Dylan Rosiak. I believe he was picked as a captain this year, right?
Yeah.
And was a captain
Yes.
last year, so he's a 2-year
So
captain. I forget which game it was. He had a season-ending injury about 8-9 games into the year, but up until that point, anything up the middle, Dylan Rosiak was on it, right? Any dive up the middle, any push up the middle was Dylan Rosiak was involved, and yeah, I mean, I think his leadership for one thing, his consistency. I've never seen a game where I go, wow, Dylan Rosiak, we could have had more from him, right? I think defense is one of the most thankless. It's playing linebacker is one of the most thankless positions because you've got to do so many jobs. You got to participate in the press. You got to participate in passing defense. Dylan Rosiak, I think, doesn't get enough thanks, but yeah, his leadership, the way that other players have developed under him, right? Matt Bailey has spoken about Dylan Rosiak's leadership. Yeah, he's leading a really talented room, and he's not like the Alec Bryant, Seth Coleman, Gabe Backus type linebacker, right? He's a bit smaller. He's a bit sort of zone reading QB spy type linebacker. I'm really excited for what he can do. It's a very essential part of a defense, especially in what Aaron Henry's trying to run. And I think him being fully healthy, him being ready to go is going to be really crucial for Illinois. Again, we talked about this last week. Illinois was one of the worst rushing defenses in all of college football last year. Having Dylan Rosiak back, healthy, and surrounded by this new group of defensive players could be great to not being one of the worst in the league.
yeah, Dylan Rosiak, leg fracture against Minnesota in that loss. I believe it was week 9. So you're right. I do think that this is a dude who can. I mean, obviously that you talk about the impact coming in at 235 pounds, and just a dude who I think has, like you mentioned, has those leadership qualities, but also like this is a physical guy. Like I feel like when I think of the way that he played last season, I mean, just the ultra physical guy. And obviously, it's a physical position, it's a physical game, but I definitely think that there's something to say about that. 60 total tackles, 25 solo, had 1.5 sacks. So not the not the headline in terms of sacking, but yeah, like a dude who I think can have that impact, and that those leadership qualities are going to be important in terms of how it is that this defense is going to handle itself. Um, and so I'm very curious to see how he plays. Obviously, we talk about second year captain, like that's a title that not the guys come in and vote, and um it's obviously an honor for these guys, and so I'm very interested to see how he'll return, because it's not like this was an injury that was a walk in the park. A leg fracture is difficult. Like it is it is rough to have to come back in there, and so I'm curious how he'll handle that. Obviously these are they have the resources to handle that. It's a Division 1. It's to Illinois. It's Big Ten. But you're just curious about it, and so I'm very interested, very intrigued by the way that he might be able to play and the kind of impact that he'll have. And so yeah, I think underrated. Like before he went down, like he had 12 total tackles in both against Oregon and Michigan. So it's some of his better games, and so who's to say that he wasn't on the trajectory to play even better before he got injured? So there could be some more upside than we think with Dylan Rosiak, and so that'll be interesting to evaluate late as we head into deep into a Big Ten opponent schedule wise in terms of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just having that consistency return. I think about the middle linebacker position as sort of the quarterback of the defense. I
Yeah,
don't know if
no
I've
question.
never played football. I've never played that role, but that role of watching the quarterback, directing traffic in a way. Again, it's not a like for like thing, but that's the closest thing you're going to have to a second year, starting quarterback returning on the defensive end.
Yeah, and so actually that is a great transition to my next dude, because the guy who had to really, I think, step up and fill some of that gap, or not necessarily step up, but kind of made more waves as the season continued, because of the amount that was needed, the production that had to be replaced. So not necessarily the same position, but Mac Resettage was making some more impact last season, when it came to that, and so I'm very interested in terms of the way that he'll play this upcoming season. A guy that is very well liked, very famous for his hair, the way that he styles it, the way that he has it. I'm interested to see the way that he plays, and interestingly so, he did have much more of a bigger role almost immediately after Dylan Rosiak went down against Michigan State. 7 total tackles. Was probably his best game of that the rest of the season. But it's a dude who I think, with those amount of reps that he had last season on the defense, that could be propelled to be a bigger contributor this season, with just the amount of maybe confidence that is gained after you're forced into action. So I'm curious to see how he plays, and interested to see the way that this Illinois team kind of puts him out there. Obviously, also a dude you can't talk about, Mac Resettage, without talking about the impact that he could have on special teams, being the kind of the is likely to be the backup punt returner this season. And so obviously, with that being said, you look at Hank Beatty and what you talked about in terms of putting Hank Beatty into more of a thrusting him into more of a wide receiver role, more than the punt returning role, and giving him that prominence, giving him that role because of the dues that have been paid. But who does that force into that spot then? Mac Resettage. And so I'm interested to see what kind of impact he has all around, not only on defense, but also on special teams. And you have a guy who can contribute in both of those ways, and that is a very valuable player.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Grossetich, he's another member of that linebacker room. When you think about the Illinois linebackers, the sort of smaller body linebackers, I think south of 6 foot, right? You sort of think of Matt Bailey, you think of Dylan Rosiak, and you think of Matt Grossetich. I don't know if they're actually below 6 foot, but those non Seth Coleman, not Alec Bryan, not non sort of Gabe Backus type linebackers, right? Those the smaller ones who aren't really at the front of the rush, but maybe the secondary, the between the secondary and the defensive line, right? Those kind of linebackers, I think. Matt Grossetich, he's a sophomore this year, right?
Yeah, so Matt Grossetich is actually a junior,
A
and
junior. Okay.
and he'll be a rotational player at the safety position. So, like I said, won't necessarily be that guy who will like going back to, I guess, what I was talking about in terms of the way that he filled in more of a role last season, like in terms of stepping up after Dylan Rosiak went down. But I think that was more of a necessity after being a guy that really uh could kind of have more support in that secondary, because the linebacker positions were more that needed more support.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I thought about that. And so yeah, but I think it'll be interesting to see the way that exactly how they how he is put out into this whole role, into this season. So we'll
Right.
see how that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
will. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, yeah, no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so who is your? I was gonna move on. Who is your next guy? I don't know if you have any more.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Mac Restich's contributions on special teams.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't have a set person here, but I think special teams returners, right? Uh, Brett's talked about how big of an improvement Hank Beatty's made, how he's the guy on the receiving core. Does that mean that Hank Beatty's not on returning duty? Is that too big of an injury risk to lose maybe your star wide receiver, right? And in that case, who does return? It could be, as you mentioned, Mac Restich. It could be a Khalil Valentine. Uh, it could be a Hudson Clement, right? It could be anybody. Uh, who steps up in this returning game? I know Hank Beatty was very successful past few years as a returner. He's gotten all conference nods. I think all conference mentions maybe. But who steps up in this special teams role will be crucial because me and you were both there last year at the beginning of the season. There were a few miscues, maybe. I believe it was forget maybe it wasn't a Kansas game, but there was a game or two where there were two muffed punts on punt returns. I don't think there was a muffed kick, but there are, again, it's another thankless position, but who steps into this role? Who is, I guess, brave enough to step into that role? Would it be a freshman? Would the lights be too bright for a freshman? Would it be, a junior or sophomore who's not getting enough reps? Maybe, a Malik Elzy. I think that's something very interesting to keep an eye on that, is a crucial part of how this football team operates with possession, with what do you call it? The field battle, right? Just how Brett likes to play, how he likes to move the lines. Special teams is so crucial. If you get that extra 10, 15 yards, you don't have to punt anymore. You could try field goal and feel safe, right? Just that kind of philosophy, that idea is, I think, crucial. And whoever does the special teams returning duty is at the core of that.
yeah. The security and knowing that you have a solid special teams unit is always paramount to anything any football team ever does. And so, yeah, you talked about it. I'm very curious to see the way that Brett Bielema, the special teamers, how they navigate this whole year in terms of that. And so it'll be interesting. Obviously, I don't think you have really much questions in terms of punting or kicking. So that's also a relief, right? And so the last piece of the puzzle that you have to figure out is, the guys in the trenches and the guys in the trenches, excuse me, and obviously that punt returner, kick returner position. Any more guys, Zeno?
Yeah, one larger than life guy. I'm a really big fan of
Oh,
this guy just as a personality,
larger
as a
than
human
life.
being.
All
James
right,
Thompson.
all
Uh,
right.
Brad Underwood. If you need a small forward, a big body small forward, a Draymond Green type guy, James Thompson's your guy to call. Uh, but in all seriousness,
Yeah.
he should be. Before we talk football, right? He's the guy in the locker room. His locker's right next to the captain's. He's loud. He's a good kind of loud, right? He radiates good energy. He's doing stuff in the community. He went to Jarlings the other day for a promotional video, which I mean, I've lived in Champaign for 13 years. If you know Jarlings, you know ball, and it's not hard to know Jarlings, right? It's right up Kirby Street. It's right there. But yeah, he clearly cares a lot about this team, about what this program is, about the opportunity he can make of it. When he arrived first, just his first impression this spring when he arrived at Illinois, it was like, wow, this guy is really talkative, right? This guy is really excited to be here, and you don't really see that out of transfers. I think about transfers, I'm thinking Zachary Franklin, who maybe wasn't as open to media. I'm thinking of Hudson Clement. I've spoken to him a couple times, and I only got my first like smile, that sort of human to human conversation with him last time, and it was maybe my third conversation with him. Uh, he seems like a guy that's well traveled, who knows what he wants, who knows what he can do, and I think what he can do in this D line, he's walking into a great situation, right? I think it's undisputed that he's going to be one of the first names on the D line to be called, and I just think that's exciting, and I think that's a name to keep out, a name to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, James Thompson, senior from Cincinnati, Ohio, at 6'6", coming in at 310 pounds. Previously at Wisconsin with Kurt Neal, a guy that you should be excited about. And like to be a guy that comes in and immediately, like before the season starts, makes a promotional video with Jarlings of all like that. That's awesome. I think that's great. And so obviously a guy that was a part with was also that guy who came into this program with, obviously I mentioned Kurt Neal, I believe it was, and didn't really have all that much production, right? Like in 2023, he had 29 total tackles, 19 solo, 10 assisted, 3 sacks, and I believe he did he only played in one game, is he redshirted that 2024 season, and he did miss a large part of that with an injury. But you are certainly excited for this guy because of those physical traits, because of the size, the pure size that this guy has. And so I'm interested to see the way that he'll play because of all of that. And so it'll be very it's very intriguing, and I think you have that built-in chemistry with Kurt Neal. I believe because of going to that first same school, and so you think I think about that a lot, and so I'm sure that this is going to be a dude who will deliver on those results. So I'm super curious. I think that it's going to be paramount for him to have a good game those first 2 games, and especially week 1, week 3 against Western Michigan as well, because of you restoring that confidence in this guy. Because obviously didn't have all that much production, hasn't had all that much production throughout his collegiate career. But if this is a guy you can instill confidence in, then you certainly feel good about him going into the rest of the season. And so it'll I'm curious. I'm very intrigued. So yeah.
It's very close to that sort of stereotypical. If you're a high school basketball coach and you walk in the hallways and you see the guy that's like 6'2", it's like, hey, you ever play basketball? It's kind of like that. You got a
Yeah.
6'6", 300-pound defensive lineman who missed 10 games last year with an injury, but this is a guy who you put anywhere on the defensive line, he can perform for you. It's just got to be that mental thing, that emotional. Can I get this guy confident? Can I get this guy playing like the person that has that body, right? Has that 6'6", 300-pound frame. And again, he's a loyal guy, right? Spent all 4 years at Wisconsin before transferring to Illinois. I think he could be the get of the season on the defensive side of the ball.
No, certainly. You just hope that you can see it from him this year, and so if you can put those pieces around him, if you can turn him into a guy, you can mold him into a guy that can be productive, then there's no reason to think that this defensive line will struggle. Obviously, those first couple games will have to be confidence building games, but like if this can come together, then the guys that you have on the defensive line, Kurt Neal, James Thompson, etc. If these are guys that you can, if these are guys that you can mold and you can put together, and if it all works out, the defensive line can be pretty solid. And once you have a solid defensive line, then the sky is the limit for this Illinois football team, especially on that defensive line. Especially when you have a guy in Gabe Akis, who by all accounts should have gone to the NFL. We've talked about this before, but definitely a dude who you think, hey, he can this team can come in and be these guys can come in and be monsters. And so you hope that's the case. Obviously, we don't know enough about this team to make any conclusions, but you certainly hope that it's that can be the case. But with that, let's pivot to another guy. Um, shall we?
Yeah,
Can I get? Yeah, should we do it, Zeno? What do you think?
yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So my next guy, and work with me here. The reason I bring this up is because it's a reality that not that many people want to talk about, and it's a reality that we kind of have to, and it's something that you don't hope has to be the case at all, and that is the backup quarterback, Ethan Hampton. Comes in at 6'3", 230 pounds from Elburn, Illinois. Obviously spent his previous, was it 4 years at Northern Illinois in DeKalb. And you think about the way that this guy kind of carries himself. You think about when you think about Ethan Hampton, you think about the upset of the year last season against Notre Dame, the eventual runner-up in the college football playoff, and what that took. But you got a guy in you got a guy in Ethan Hampton who has the reps. To me, that's the most important thing of all. Obviously, you had Trey Petty leave last season, I believe. You had him leave, and there were obviously younger quarterbacks now in the room. And so you think about what this quarterback room looks like, and you have to feel good about the backup position. And I think that's what you have in Ethan Hampton, because you obviously you don't want to see this be the case. You never want to have your quarterback have something happen to them. And so if all goes well, in the perfect world, we only see Ethan Hampton ever have snaps at the end of games in garbage time. But just to give you a taste of what he's done throughout his collegiate career, I mean, last season he had 1,600 yards and completed 58.3% of his passing attempts, and he had mixed roles in the previous couple seasons, but last season, can you imagine that confidence that it gives you to beat the eventual college football runner-up and to be a solid team that ends up going and making a bowl run to win a bowl game? He didn't play in the bowl game, but he was that guy that kind of led this Northern Illinois team to a bowl game. Obviously didn't play, but I think about the amount of reps that he has in college football, the amount of football that he's seen, not only as a backup, but also as a starter. And you have to feel good about where you're at in terms of the backup position. And there's no question to me, like I said, the backup position is paramount because you never want to see this guy play. But the reality is it's a physical game and it could happen. So, you never want to put bad energy out there, but it's just the reality. It's what it is.
Yeah, Trey Petty's still in the program. I think you might be thinking of Donovan Leary, who transferred
Donovan Leary is the
to
guy. I'm
Tulane.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about the backup quarterback. You know who I think? You know what I think of is I think of the 2-point conversion against Michigan that he had when Luke had his helmet ripped off. If you don't have a guy that you can trust and put in there, again, at the end of the day, 14-point win, 2-point conversion makes it a 13-point win. The sun still shines, the moon still rises at the end of the night. But if you don't have confidence in the backup quarterback, and let's say there is a situation where, not even a Luke Altmaier injury, it could be, he sprains an ankle in the first quarter and has to sit out for, a few minutes, just get his tempo going again. Maybe he, knock on wood, gets suspended, can't play for a half, right? You need a backup quarterback who can step up, and that's exactly what Ethan Hampton is perfect for. He's gotten a lot of praise from this staff. He's a veteran. Again, takes a lot to participate in a team that beat Notre Dame, right? And I'd like to see. We're excited about the freshman on this, the freshman quarterback on this team, right? The younger guys, the Carson Boyds, the Jershawn Newtons, the Trey Pettys. But before any of them see the field, it will be Ethan Hampton on the field as that sort of first deputy for Luke Altmaier. And, I don't think that we'll see a similar season. Again, not to put bad energy out there, but, Illinois needed somebody to step up when Luke went down with a concussion. And they had a John Paddock. If they need a John Paddock this year, it'll be Ethan Hampton. And, that's proven guy, veteran.
And you think about the background with John Paddock. You got to remember, John Paddock was a guy who had been to, I believe, Ball State? He had played.
Might have been Bowling Green.
I believe it was Ball State, but John Paddock, the point is that John Paddock had never seen a Big Ten, he had never seen a Big Ten snap. And he ended up, Ball State is where he went. He had never seen a Big Ten snap. And he ended up being a guy who people were left after the 2023 season thinking, whoa, this is was John Paddock the guy the whole time? And obviously we're talking a bit crazy. But listen, the point is that, you just never know who could be that guy. And I think what matters the most in football when it comes to quarterback is the amount of reps. And Ethan Hampton maybe does not have as many reps as John Paddock had coming into this coming into the season he backed up Illinois for. But it's a similar amount in terms of the snapping. So I think maybe that was the reasoning. That was the thought process behind, getting a guy like Ethan Hampton. And just as a point of reference, against Western Illinois last season, Northern Illinois put a beatdown against this team. Ethan Hampton completed 18 of 20 passing attempts, threw for 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. They also played Central Michigan, which Illinois also had Central Michigan on their schedule. Now, it was a narrow win, but no touchdown, no interception, but completed 19 of 30 passing attempts, 63 completion percentage. Also, 83. I'm also seeing more teams. Western Michigan, in November, in the middle of November, or early November, he threw for 156 yards. Granted, not that many yards, right? But completed 13 of 16 passing attempts, 81% completion percentage. This is good. That Illinois has a guy that they can rely on, whether or not anything. You hope nothing happens.
Yeah, we bring up John Paddock because of the magic and mystique around passing for 500 in a win over Indiana.
Yeah.
But the reality is, this season, Illinois will never pass for 500 yards. Put the house on it. That's just not Barry Lunny's system, right? You need a good balance between the passing and the running. You need a good consistent quarterback that makes the necessary passes. I feel like that's what Ethan Hampton is. Again, I didn't watch the Northern Illinois games. I didn't watch all 11 games. I sure did watch the end of the Notre Dame game, right? But it feels like he's the kind of quarterback that Barry Lunny would have recruited if Barry Lunny was at UTSA. That sort of game manager style, quarterback who makes the right reads, makes the right passes, doesn't do anything dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And should Luke not be able to see the field for whatever it be, whatever reason, Ethan Hampton's the guy. And he's an Illinois guy too. Elburn, Illinois, shout out. But he's an Illinois guy, so coming back, playing, it's similar to John Paddock, right? John Paddock was a fourth generation Illini. Maybe dig through Ethan Hampton's family tree. We'll see.
Well, so you mentioned the mystique. Just a little bit more on Ethan Hampton. You mentioned the mystique around this guy, John Paddock. But listen, there's no question to me that there is some level of mystique and interest around Ethan Hampton because of what the team accomplished last year, beating that Notre Dame team. But to add to that a little bit, you also, another thing to note, and I wrote about this at IlliniInquirer.com. So check that story out on Ethan Hampton as well. Thomas Hammock is the head coach in Northern Illinois. Yeah, Thomas Hammock used to be a running backs coach for Brett Bielema. Those two have a close relationship, and Thomas Hammock is quietly a respected head coach in college football. And so to have a guy that gives you I'm sure there's so much security in knowing that for Brett Bielema to know that that Ethan Hampton was a guy who played under one of his former coaches and a guy who's seen a lot of success at Northern Illinois, who is quietly building a pretty decent program out there in Northern Illinois that's been very competitive throughout the past couple seasons. So you think about that when you think about this Ethan Hampton guy. So definitely a dude who I think matters a lot. And so we'll see how whether or not he sees any playing time, obviously for the right reasons. Hopefully not for the wrong reasons. So yeah, cool. All right.
Yeah,
I mean, got any more? Does that conclude our list of guys, or
that was my 5? But yeah, anything else that you want to bring up? Local media day from fall camp from summer.
All right, so I do have a little nugget about an honorable mention for a guy who. This isn't a headliner, guys. Like, this is a dude who's just fun. Like, this is a dude who's happy to be here. That's what the sense that I got when I talked to him at local media day at the locker rooms. It was certainly awesome. It was working our story that's going to be out at IlliniInquirer.com very soon on obviously Illinois is a program that has 5 brothers on the roster. It's very interesting, just the way that it all worked out. But 5 sets of brothers on this Illinois football program. And among them, Hudson Clement and Murphy Clement. So just a little nugget about Murphy. Murphy is a running back. Obviously, Hudson Clement was a guy that Illinois has invested a lot in to try to get him in this wide receiver room. They've seen him in this wide receiving room, and he's had a pretty decent camp. Close relationship with Justin Bullock now because of the nature of those two guys being transfers as well. But a very important part, a very interesting thing about Murphy Clement. Murphy was actually considering a move because he hadn't done so well at West Virginia. He was considering a move to Shepherd University, the Division II school, one of the best Division II schools in the country. And Bears fans might remember Shepherd University as the school where Tyson Bagent, the backup quarterback to Caleb Williams, who just got paid $10 million for 2 years to be the backup. That's the school where Murphy Clement was about to end up, and it's very close to West Virginia. But instead, he joins his brother, Hudson Clement, at Illinois. And it's just, he's a running back in that deep running back room. But you got the sense that this is a guy who's happy to be there and is enjoying his time in Champaign. So I think that deserves a shout out. I think it's awesome that this is a dude who is on the team that is able to get that experience as well. And I don't mean to discredit anything that he's done in his football career. This is also a guy who, by his own merits, was able to get this opportunity. Illinois, what Hudson had told me is that Brett had no idea that Murphy even existed. Like, all he did, his only role in this whole thing was that Hudson had briefly mentioned he had a brother who also played at West Virginia. Brett Bielema and his staff looked at his film. Next thing you know, he ends up getting an offer. So just a very interesting nugget right there about one Murphy Clement.
Yeah, the two brothers. I'd say 5.5 brothers, right? Johnny Newton's brother is on the team. I guess
Good point. That's a good
I don't know
point.
if that's fair or not, but I'd say 5.5. Yeah, the Clement brothers are great. They grew up in Martinsburg, West Virginia. That's 2.5 hours from Morgantown. I don't know if you know this, but I lived in West Virginia and I spoke with Hudson Clement during local media day. We spoke about Morgantown, what his favorite food spot was. I remember that favorite food spot. It's called Dirtyburg. If you're ever in for chicken and waffles and you're in Morgantown, West Virginia, head over to Dirtybird. It's in downtown. But yeah, these are two guys that I think they don't play similarly, right? Murphy was a running back, transition to sort of a defensive back, right? Safety, I believe. It's interesting because you never think to do that, right? Because Brett said he sees DNA, right? He told us the story about the Watt brothers when he was at Wisconsin. Maybe Brett needs to start his own branch of science, right? Maybe he's got his own like Brett-isms. I don't know, but it's worked before. It's worked at Wisconsin. It's maybe going to work here. I'd love to see what Zanai Scott, what Taiwan Cox can do. We know what their brothers can do. We know what Johnny Newton can do. We don't know what Jershon can do, right? I think it's really interesting the different families that they have on the roster, and it's just going to be a fun thing to follow along. Just seeing the interaction, seeing how they all mesh together. It'll be like family, right? It'll be like playing for the high school team and saying, "Oh, like my brother's starting cornerback, or my brother's a starting wide receiver," and I think it's just fun, right? It's just fun.
There's no question. And if you want to know a little bit, if you want to learn a little bit more about what exactly it is about these brothers that makes them so special and what chronicling what exactly is happening with these guys, go to IlliniInquirer.com, read about that. I will also have some stuff up about Caleb Patterson, Jabo, on the champagneroom.com coming up in the next couple of days. So, yeah, with that, it was an awesome pod with you, Zeno. As always, thank you so much for pulling up to this. Appreciate everyone who stopped by, took a listen, and subscribe, rate, review if you so please. All right, peace.
Peace.